Good morning, and thank you for being with us today. My name is Monica Moazes, and I'm the Communications Director for the Nevada Attorney General's Office. Today, AG Aaron Ford will be making a critical announcement related to Nevada's ongoing efforts in our opioids litigation. As he is giving remarks, members of the media are invited to submit questions on the chat box section of this platform. We will have a brief question and answer portion following this announcement. AG Ford, I know we're all in suspense here, so when you're ready, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Monica. I appreciate you setting this up, and good morning, everyone. I am your Attorney General, Aaron Ford, and thank you for joining us here today for this important announcement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that several media outlets have reached out to my office and to me over the past couple of weeks, asking questions about our sister state's settlement with Mackenzie and Company, asking why isn't Nevada a part of this, or what went wrong here. And I thought you promised to crack down on the opioid crisis, so why didn't you join the settlement? These are examples of the types of questions I received. What I couldn't share with anyone at that time was the fact that my office and extended team have been working day and night to either prepare for litigation against Mackenzie or to secure a settlement that was more appropriate for Nevadans. I've led a team dedicated to these issues, and I have with me here today some of my members of that team. Our consumer advocate, Ernest Figueroa, who has been a big partner in this litigation. I also have with me Mark Kruger, consumer counsel for my Bureau of Consumer Protection. Mark has quite literally been on the ground with me for 2 a.m. phone calls, strategy sessions, questions, and ideas. That goes the same for my Senior Deputy Attorney General, Laura Tucker, who is also on this virtual meeting with me. I want to also expressly thank her for giving this matter her time, attention, nights and weekends, and I want to thank all of them for entertaining all of my calls and questions. This team, along with our very capable outside counsel, Eglet Adams, has been instrumental to the success I'm about to announce today. Frankly, I felt that as a hardest hit state, Nevada needed and deserved more than what was being made available to us in the multi-state settlement. To be sure, our sister states did a great job of negotiating that settlement, and I applaud their efforts. And normally, a multi-state settlement is the most efficient and successful way to settle claims by various states against a particular entity. In this case, however, because as I mentioned, Nevada is one of the states that has been hardest hit by this opioid epidemic, and because of Nevada's unique laws, legal status, and the strength of our case, as well as our bargaining power, I made the decision to forego the multi-state settlement, and again, to both prepare for litigation against and pursue separate discussions with Mackenzie. So we broke off from the multi-state group, we went it alone, and today I'm happy to announce the fruits of our labor. Before I was elected your Attorney General, I told voters that if I was elected to this role, my focus would be on Nevada families. How can I help them? When and why are they struggling? And how can I be a champion for them? And months into my term, one of the areas I identified that Nevadans are really struggling with is the opioid epidemic, an epidemic that has wreaked havoc on our communities and our entire state. The previous administration had filed a lawsuit against one entity based on its illegal conduct that contributed to the opioid crisis here in Nevada. But I knew that more had to be done to bring justice on behalf of the thousands of Nevadans who died and are suffering because of the unprecedented public health crisis. Republican or Democrat, this is a bipartisan fight and one my office has been proud to continue. So early on in my term, I expanded that lawsuit that my predecessor brought so that we could bring to justice and hold accountable all those culpable for their conspiracy to, for example, dupe doctors into prescribing more and more deadly and addictive pills that have left countless families in our entire state suffering in the wake of their greed. The complaint now lists over 40 defendants, including top-level executives and manufacturers at several large companies, and that litigation continues. But today, I'm thrilled to announce the first Nevada-only settlement in our ongoing opioids litigation. As promised, my office has been using every legal tool at our disposal to hold those responsible for the devastation opioids have caused Nevadans. We have settled with Mackenzie and Company. one of the world's largest consulting firms, to resolve investigations into the company's role in our opioids epidemic. And as a result of this settlement, Nevada will receive $45 million, payable in 2 installments of $23 million in 45 days and $22 million in 120 days. And in short order, directly after this press conference, my office will be filing papers with the court to effectuate this agreement. As you will see in our court filing, Mackenzie advised opioid manufacturers, including OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma, for over a decade on how to maximize profits from its opioids products, including targeting high volume prescribers and using specific messaging to get physicians to prescribe more opioids to more patients. Mackenzie provided guidance, consulting, and plans to entities involved in manufacturing, marketing, and selling opioids, including Purdue, Endo, Johnson & Johnson, and Mallinckrodt, to increase the sale and the use of opioids in Nevada. Mackenzie also worked closely with its clients to assist them with strategy and implementation of their goals. It provided marketing plans to manufacturers who in turn targeted prescribers, writing the most prescriptions for the most patients and all for profit. Purdue, for example, used the information to increase OxyContin sales through physician targeting and specific messaging to prescribers. Mackenzie's strategies formed the pillars of Purdue's sales tactics for over a decade. Purdue approved Mackenzie's plan and its strategies, and together with Mackenzie, moved to implement the plans, which significantly increased Purdue's opioid sales, in particular for OxyContin. I'd like to note again that Nevada is a hardest hit state, and the devastation caused by the opioid epidemic is felt by every mother and father who has lost a child. It's felt by siblings who have lost a sister or a brother. It's felt by friends and colleagues who lost one of their own. And obviously, it's felt by those still suffering from an opioid addiction. Most unfortunately, opioids have killed thousands in Nevada, and they continue to ravage the lives of many more, creating one of the largest public health epidemics in this country's history. Given these considerations and other unique legal rights, it was imperative that my office either litigate these issues or pursue our own negotiations to ensure Nevadans were properly compensated for their losses. The conduct of Mackenzie and others have devastated our communities, and I'm proud to be holding them accountable and to obtain the justice Nevadans are owed. I applaud Mackenzie's decision to step forward to address the opioid crisis and the particular devastation it caused here in Nevada. Mackenzie was the first company to successfully work with our sister states to address the problem, rather than engage in protracted litigation or delay. And I'm pleased that Mackenzie was willing to do the same with Nevada. Mackenzie's willingness to settle with Nevada, along with our sister states, will help focus our energy on further addressing this problem. This settlement comes at a time when Nevada needs an influx of funds to continue its work in this area, which is particularly important in light of the pandemic that has seen a resurgence in opioid-related deaths in Nevada. In conclusion, I look forward to working with the legislature, as I know some legislators have particular ideas on this issue. I look forward to working with the governor's office, executive agencies, and others to use these funds to reduce the effects of the opioid epidemic. Before we take questions, I'd like to reassure Nevadans that this is the first of what I hope to be many other productive outcomes, some via litigation and others via settlement. I promised to bring justice for Nevadans and address this epidemic to the best of my office's ability. And we will not rest until everyone responsible pays for the devastation that they have caused Nevadans. And with that, I'll take some questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, AG Ford. This is certainly fantastic news for Nevada. At this time, we'll move into the question and answer portion of today's announcements. Reporters, just a reminder, if you do have any questions, on the right-hand side of your screen is a chat box. It's kind of 2 rectangles where you can submit your questions. We do have a question from the Review Journal, and they are asking you, AG Ford, how much was the state offered in the multi-state settlement? And I think they're referring to the original settlement when we joined that investigation.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Review Journal. Before I answer that, I wanted to acknowledge again that our sister states did a great job of negotiating a multi-state settlement, and I applaud their efforts. Normally, a settlement with the multi-state is the most efficient and successful way to settle claims by the state. In this case, however, again, because of Nevada's unique laws and our status, we opted to pursue this separately. This proved to be the correct decision, as our settlement would have been approximately $7 million had we remained in the multi-state, versus the $45 million my office has secured independently. It was and continues to be our belief that Nevadans were entitled to more, and we got you more.
Thank you, AG Ford. Another question asks, can you please explain what remains to be accomplished in the ongoing litigation?
Absolutely. So as I indicated, we expanded the initial lawsuit that my predecessor filed to include over 40 defendants that have contributed immensely to the opioid epidemic that we find ourselves in. And so that litigation is ongoing with the trial date set for early next year. We are still in discovery and motion practice, and we intend to pursue that litigation to the end and to prevail to bring much needed resources to our state to help address the opioid epidemic.
Thank you, AG Ford. Another question is, how has the pandemic affected the opioid crisis?
Well, we've seen an increase in opioid-related instances, both in death and in terms of addiction during the pandemic. And again, it's something that we've kept in mind as we continue to litigate and to discuss settlement with various entities. And we are confident that we're going to be able to ultimately bring to justice those individuals and entities that are responsible for that.
Thank you, AG. I'm just checking on the other questions. We do have another question for you. It's about Nevada's plans. The reporter is asking if Nevada plans to stay out of other multi-state opioid settlements.
It's all a matter of the circumstances. We have every intention on working with our sister states because, again, this is a bipartisan, nonpartisan issue with families across the nation and, frankly, across the world, but specifically in our states that have been affected by this. And so we will continue to work with our sister states to address this as much as we can.
AG, I'll give you one more question here. A reporter asked, why was the settlement so much larger in Nevada than in other states? Did Mackenzie get more out of this settlement than the others? And how will the money be used that we are acquiring from this settlement?
Well, the multi-state settlement was a negotiation for the 55 states and territories that entertained and agreed to that settlement. We opted again not to pursue that because we felt that the amount of monies that would come to Nevada under that settlement were woefully insufficient to address Nevada's hardest hit status. And so we negotiated separately, all the while being prepared to litigate this issue. And we were able to secure greater resources and funds from Mackenzie to address the problems that arose out of their interaction with companies that produce opioids. So that's the best answer I can offer you relative to why we received more. The second question was, how will the funds be spent? Is that right?
Correct.
Well, the money is going to be spent for purposes of remedying the problems that opioids have wrought in our state. And we're going to be working with, again, the legislature, with our governor, with our state officials, state agencies, and others who are interested in these issues to figure out the best way to appropriate these funds to address those issues.
Thank you so much, AG Ford. This concludes today's press conference. As AG Ford mentioned earlier, we'll be filing the documents today in Carson City, and we'll be sending out our press release shortly, which will include the filing. If there are any further questions, please feel free to contact myself and Ashley. Our contact information will also be listed on the press release that goes out. Again, on behalf of AG Ford and the Nevada Attorney General's Office, we thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for showing up.